Welcome everybody to the 21st stream of DBB Live. Hope you've all had a great day so far. Ready to talk some Detroit basketball. As always, I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, and I'm joined by my co-host, the Aussie himself, Jack Kelly from Detroit Bad Boys. Jack, how you feeling?
I'm good, Wes. I'm good, man. Always good to jump on, talk Pistons. Still in the dog days. I think we got a little bit to talk about today. Some interesting stuff on Twitter yesterday regarding Detroit's big men. Yeah, man, always happy to talk hoops with yourself.
Yeah, me too. No, I feel like even though we're in the middle of nowhere, I guess schedule-wise, I don't know. It seems like past few weeks now, there's been at least some kind of subject that's circling around the Piston sphere that we can dive into. So on that note, let's jump right in. It was Sam Vecini, the guy, the legend over at the Athletic. He tweets about the Pistons' two big lineups. I believe the phrase he used was to light it on fire and burn it, or something similar to that. Specifically, he was mentioning Wiseman and Duran and Wiseman and Bagley as a little aside. Probably not good for James Wiseman that he got mentioned in both of those pairings. But regardless, where are you at on this whole two bigs things? Is it really just the two bigs being, Duran and Wiseman, or are you throwing like Stewart in that loop as well? And do you think that Monty's actually going to end up running with this experiment a little bit?
So I think, like, when I think two bigs, I do count Stu as one of them. So I like the two bigs are Duran, Wiseman, Bagley, and Stu. Sorry, they're the bigs I consider bigs. So um I sort of just to because I knew we were going to bring this up at the start. I thought I would so using those four or three guys or four players, sorry. Yeah, my bad. I thought I would just like put into tiers which combinations I would like to see or how I've sort of set them up. So in the first tier, we have has a future. So this is like a combination I think actually has some form of future. I'm not saying this is the starting front court for the future. Like this is a combination I could see like actually making an impact and can potentially contributing to winning basketball. And that's I think this one's sort of obvious, but that's Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. When you look at the advanced numbers, like none of the numbers are really good for Detroit, so I'm not really going to bring them up. But those two together, probably of all the combinations, strike me as like I think those two will start opening night. And if you look at sort of the ceilings of each player and like the sort of pathway they're going down developmentally wise, like and we've like it's been discussed amongst the Pistons community, like ad nauseum. But if Stu's jumper is real, and lots of people believe it isn't, and plenty of people think he can get there, like there is a real world where those two can sort of contribute to winning basketball together. Like Duran's got the passing ability, Stu can switch. They're both good rebounders. Well, Duran's an excellent rebounder. Rim protection is an area they would need to improve upon, but I think there's some potential there. And then the next tier I've got is can envision it happening. So these are like lineups which I don't necessarily love, but I could see it potentially happening if the season doesn't go the right way or things don't go right. And that's Isaiah Stewart and Bagley, and then Isaiah Stewart and Wiseman. Now, I don't see those lineups as like a future sort of something that Detroit's going to lean upon, but I could see those two like Isaiah Stewart with either of those two centers sort of being run out this season. Then the next tier is Bagley and Duran under worth a shot. So this is something worth a shot. I don't think we really saw it much last season. It's maybe a lineup you just try and get up and down the floor. Not a lot of shooting, but could see it maybe having some potentially good moments. Then the next category is if things go really bad, and that's if we have significant injury or player aggression. That's Bagley and Wiseman. Once again, mainly because I feel like we didn't see a lot of it. I'm not really in on it. And then there's the last category I've got is I'm turning the TV off, and that's Wiseman and Duran. And this isn't an attack of each of those guys. We saw it at Summer League, but the thing with those two is like, and like in Las Vegas, they both put up like decent stat lines in the games they played together. But if you actually watch them playing together, I just don't ever see that working. Like they are two true centers. Like they are two true centers that can't stretch the floor right now, aren't the best, don't have the quickest feet, definitely can't guard the perimeter on like a even like a 50% basis, like aren't necessarily switchable. I know they can show flashes, but when we're talking actually switchable, like Isaiah Stewart's the only one that's really shown that. I just, even the rebounding, like I just don't think you'd get that much benefit from playing these two together. So yeah, I know that was probably a lot for people to take in, but just to summarize, the only one I really want to see is Stu and Duran, and then Wiseman and Duran. I'm so far out on it's yeah. I can't. I have no other words for it. Like I just don't want to see it. I don't think it's has a future, and I think we only saw it for experimental phase at Summer League and the end of last season. So I know I just gave you a lot there, Wes. I don't know if you have any comments or anything you'd like to add to that, but yeah, that's where I'm at with the bigs.
Of course I do, Jack. I mean, this is a talk show, right? Real quick though, first we got to shout out our guy, Camille here. You know, he mentioned he's had some heart problems, so he's been in and out a little bit. Hopefully everything's going well with you, my friend. Obviously we're thinking about you, but with the two bigs, I mean, I pretty much agree with just about all of your tiers there. Any pairing that involves Isaiah Stewart, I think it's got a shot because Isaiah Stewart can switch and guard a little bit out on the perimeter if he really has to. Um, so there's at least that. I mean, I would at this point kind of say Stewart's a quasi big. He's not a true five. Like a five is a big these days in the NBA. But guys like Stewart and Bagley, they have some four-ish traits where maybe if you you know do the math right, you can make a pairing work. But yeah, Stewart, if he's in the pairing, it's usually going to be okay. I think the most interesting one, and it's the one that Sam Vecini spent the most time talking about. It's that Wiseman and Duran one, and it's not interesting because I think it's a good idea. It's just the one that we saw it in summer league. We saw it a little bit to end last season too. There's clearly at least a little bit of a thought that maybe these two guys can work it out in a similar way that Mobley and Jared Allen did, or a few of the other more recent two big lineups like that you've seen in Atlanta, for example, when they had John Collins. My issue with it, and I mean, you got to go way back into our archives for this one, but we've talked about this before. You primarily at the end of last season. If that pairing is going to work, James Wiseman needs to become something that he is not right now. Like if it were to ever have a shot, James Wiseman would need to no longer post up. He'd need to really no longer be involved in the pick and roll outside of a few dribble handoffs here and there. And he'd need to be a face up on the perimeter, catch and rip dribble drive guy. Basically, quick reactions, get downhill and finish. And like I'll give him that he's athletic enough to do it. He seems like he's got the ball handling that he could probably do it. He's nimble enough on his feet that he can do it. The thing is, he's just not done it ever. Like it flashes every now and then in transition where he takes something coast to coast, but in the half court, he's not doing that sort of thing. And if that pairing's going to work, that's what it's going to take because what Duran has is too valuable around the rim comparatively to what Wiseman would offer. Like even like 5 to 5, there's a reason Jalen Duran's ahead of him on the depth chart, right? Like Jalen Duran is the better five than James Wiseman. So if one of them's going to make a change, it's got to be Wiseman, and he's got to do those types of things to make the pairing work. I I'm willing to give him like a little bit of time at the start of the season. God forbid they actually go forward with this sort of thought that it might work out and we see a bunch of these minutes. Like the first month, I'm willing to give James Wiseman to go out there to prove, hey, I'm a different guy now. Here's what I figured out over the summer, changed my game. I'm going to make it work because I want this to work long term in Detroit. Great. If he can do that, all the way on board. Great. Excited for James Wiseman. This is awesome. I'm not expecting that. I don't think that's going to happen. And I would, at this point, rather bet on seeing what Isaiah Livers has to offer in the rotation than a guy like James Wiseman playing down to the four position next to one of the other fives. So, and I think it was Mr. Jones. Here we go. I'll pull it back up. He brought this up. This was also from Vicini's tweet thread, but Wiseman and Marvin Bagley. I think that's your turn off the TV, Jack. I think that's the one. Look at that
This,
points allowed, that defensive rating. I'm usually not big on that kind of statistic, but when it's that bad, and they did play a decent amount of minutes down the stretch, like it just matches what I watched. So that's my turn the TV off. So there's my rant. There's my James Wiseman thoughts. I'm not expecting anything big, but I'm at least like I don't want to throw him out yet. I'm willing to give him
yeah.
a shot, but talk to me after a month of the season, and it might be time to cut the cord.
So I think my biggest issue, and like just with the Wiseman and Durant thing in particular, is like, and this is what I saw at Summer League once again, and even last season, is like they will have moments where they show flashes of like a high-low connection, or they'll have a dominant couple of possessions on the glass. And it's like if you just fixate on those two for the possession and they do something nice, you're like, oh wow, that works. But it's like, what about everyone else around them? Like how much, like it's the impact it has on the rest of the players on the court that just turns me off the most. It's like you are building your offense essentially around two guys to like operate in and around the key because they can't really do anything outside the key, like in terms of like creating shots or shots for others. Like I don't know, like it's just what is the point of that with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey? And like people bash Jaden for his first game of Summer League, and yeah, he was poor. And it's like I don't know, like look at who's like what's inside the painted area. Like it's just I don't know. It's just you can look at them doing things in spots and having nice plays together, but overall, it just doesn't make sense to me at all. And like I know
Yeah.
you're the same, and a lot of people share the same thought. But I guess like I feel like sometimes, and because I was guilty of it last season, like early on in the Wiseman sort of experiment, like you can get sometimes caught just watching the individual player or individual player's connection with another player that you actually forget like the impact it's actually having on the rest of the team and the lineup surrounding it. And that's where like that's where like my after watching it at Summer League, like I was just like, it just doesn't make any sense to me to play them together.
Well, like think back to the even in summer league, but especially last season on those high low connections, right? The things that got everyone excited. Who was high? It was Jalen Duren. He should
Yeah.
not be high. He needs to be near the rim. Like I get that we want to expand his game a little bit. We're exploring that jump shot, maybe a little off the dribble stuff. That's all great. Like love to see it. Not right now. He's 19. He's still figuring out a lot of stuff, and he's really dang good around the basket. Like he's really good down there. Again,
Yeah.
I said there's a reason that he's projected as the starting five. There are some things he does really well. Some of the best on the roster, and he's also got a lot of potential. So like he should not be changing his game to accommodate a lesser prospect. It should be going the other way around. And you saw that same trend in summer league. And with Wiseman specifically, I do think this is one of those weird situations where if you could just like merge James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley, it might be more interesting to me. Because if you think about the reason that Duran and Bagley is viable is because how does Bagley play on offense? He cuts,
Yeah.
he rolls hard, and he dribble drives. That's it. Like he's not a necessarily quick decision maker. He gets tunnel vision. He doesn't pass the ball. Like there are big faults with Marvin Bagley, but the way that he attacks is
Yeah.
much more conducive to small ball five or playing next to another big. So if you could throw that in Wiseman's body, maybe you got something more interesting. But I mean, to be completely honest, at this point, I'm even a little uncomfortable with James Wiseman as the backup five. I expect him to be. That's not the choice I'd make.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he can prove me wrong. But
Well, I
yeah,
was just going to bring this comment up from YouTube user because I don't want this to come across as once again because Wiseman's a very I don't know, it's a hot
he's
topic,
got
and like
so
I don't
many
want this to come
tools. I
across as
want
a
to be
like
positive about him. It's just
yeah.
hard.
Yeah, like where I'm talking to the sphere of like him playing specifically two bigs. Like I think there is a world where he could be the backup big, and like you just said, Wes, I hope he proves us wrong because I certainly, as of today, probably don't have him as the backup big, but I could easily see it happening opening night. And I think regardless, he gets a shot at being that backup big, whether it's through
For sure.
injury or opportunity with rotations and Monty. But I just want to clarify that, like once again, like this isn't us dumping on Wiseman and saying get him out of the league, get him off the team. Like I think West in particular, you've been very supportive of Wiseman, like in seeing his potential and the potential side of things. And like I see it as well. I just think as regards to two bigs, like I just don't see it. And I love what you brought up about Bagley and putting him in Wiseman's body or like that comparison because that's what we've wanted to see from Wiseman since his first 3 to 4 games with Detroit last year. Is like, show us that face-up game. Like, use that speed you have and that sort of quickness you have at that size. But it just seems like can sometimes, if he's not scoring the ball or consistently involved, he reverts to posting up a lot, which just
isn't great.
Is okay in certain spots if he's got a noticeable mismatch but yeah, just at the rate he was posting up really sort of bogged things down.
We should jump into some questions here, but before we do, I do want to clarify because YouTube user, you caught me, my friend. You did catch me. I misspoke. It's not viable. It's just not offensive to watch. Offensively, the reason it's not viable is because of how bad it is on defense. Because neither of those two are good defenders. Wiseman and Duran together, that's just bad all around right now. But at least offensively, you could imagine it working out. I'm more with you on this one. I think they need to upgrade either spot
Yeah.
long term. But regardless, you want to hop into some questions?
Well, there was, just while we're talking the two bigs, there was a question from Camille, which I thought sort of tied in nicely with what we've been talking about. And he said, which of the tradable players would you like to bring to the team and pair with our bigs then? I know what my answer is to this. I'm interested to hear what yours is.
So, which of the tradable players is this? Are we looking at like around the NBA to try and find someone
Yeah.
via trade to bring in?
Well, my response would be just to jump in was like, I don't think they need to bring in any more bigs necessarily right now. Like, I think they need to shed a big. Or like, I think, in my opinion, like whether he starts or not, Isaiah Stewart is the backup five I would like to see opening night. Like, so what I mean by that is like he might start at the 4 and come off early, or he comes off the bench as your backup five. Like that, if I had my absolute way, like that's how it would be. Because I think he'd be an awesome backup big. And I think he would thrive against reserve
I'm
bigs.
right there with you, 100%. I think I was just talking to Bryce about this the other day. Like my dream rotation is I don't care who starts. I want to basically run a 9-man rotation and stagger Stu and Duran as your starting and backup five with just a little bit of minutes there at the 4 for Isaiah Livers to let him expand and explore what he can do. But like 10 tops, by and large, just a 9-man rotation with all the guys that we've been talking about are for sure in the rotation. And then you throw in Livers is kind of the end of the bench kind of guy that's going to get a few spot minutes here and there. And obviously, injuries and there are going to be nights off for guys, so it won't be perfect like that. But I'm with you. I don't want them to add another big. I think they're good with what they got. I'd rather them add a wing, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. You can never have too many wings either. All right, next question. And Camille, if there's any centers or someone you would like the team trade for, chuck them in the comments, but that's just where we are at on it. Next question from QT. Cade being the one All-Star, who is the second All-Star presently on the roster? Or if you don't think Cade is the first, who are the two All-Stars for the Pistons? Could be many years from now.
I still think this is an easy answer. I think it's Jaden Ivey. Um, I mean, he's got the easiest path to being an all-star if you look at what usually gets you those votes, right? It's scoring and being athletic and highlight dunks, and that's all the things that Jaden Ivey's going to do. I would not be expecting that this year or even next year at this point. I think, maybe year 4, year 5 for him making that kind of leap. I think that, that's in the cards. He did. I mean, he had a really good rookie year. I think I'm expecting another step forward out of him this year. I think he's going to be a really good player in a few years. I do think he's got that all-star, not consistent all NBA, but pushing that boundary. I think that's where his ceiling is. Really very good all-star, multiple appearances. Yeah, that's where I see Jaden Ivey ending up.
Yeah, I think, look, I'm with you, but just for the sake of conversation, like Jalen Duren, like we've spoken sort of about the improvements he needs to make on the defensive end, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like his scoring take a bit of a bump this season or in year 3. They could sort of get him in all-star conversations at the center position, because I just think Cade, for one, is going to significantly benefit with having him as a role man. And like we've spoken about in the past few shows, but just watching those two in the USA scrimmages, and I guess the Rico Hines as well, like that pick and roll between those two has just been on point. Yes, the defense will be tougher come regular season, and like once fatigue sets in, there's plenty of other factors that will play into it. But those two just sort of like seem to have a really great connection. By the way, I posted something today. I actually thought they played more than this, but it's the NBA website said they've only played 25 minutes together last season. I thought it was around 80. Either way, it's nothing. So to see that connection, like, I mean, if Jalen Duren, I could see him maybe getting to 18, 20 points a game at some stage if he's paired with Cade and things go in that direction. The defensive end is where he'll have to pick it up to become an all-star, I think. But yeah, I think it's either, I think Ivy's the most likely, but I could see it being Duren.
I think I'm going to sound like such a hater. I'm not nearly as high on Jalen Duren's ceiling. I think a lot of why he gets talked about as having a ridiculously high ceiling is because he is so young, and a lot of things with him are not material yet. That there are a few things he does really well, and if you squint, like you could imagine him doing a bunch of other really valuable things really well. I'm not banking on it. I think he's going to be a really, really good center. I think a lot of it's going to rely on his defense, but I mean, Robert Williams would be great. I still think that's, the type of guy he can be, maybe with some additional playmaking, though Robert Williams is no slouch there. Yeah, I still just don't see the all-star upside out of Duren, but I still think point. Like valuable fourth best player, like, and you can't replace him. You need him on the championship team. That's all in the cards. I just don't. Absolutely. I don't see, 20 and 13 coming out of him anytime soon.
And I think you touched on this last week, Wes, when I said, why does it feel like the fan base is a little bit more down on Jaden Ivey? And it's because like he's more set and what he's going to be to an extent. Like he's 21, turning 22 this season, I think. Jaden, as you said, and we all know Jalen Duren's 19. So, and the thing with Duren is like, and this was like, I learned this through watching Andre Drummond, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're in the financial space.
Not in the financial space. You're right the first time. I am an economist, yes.
Okay, well, I feel like you're an intelligent man. You'll know this.
Keep me out of finance.
What's the opportunity? Jeez. What's the opportunity cost? Is this the right phrase of Jalen Duren? Yeah. Like trying all this stuff. Like this is where it comes down to like, what's the opportunity cost of him being out in the perimeter playmaking and trying to build his like dribble drive game or handle? Like, what does that do to everyone else around him? What opportunities is that taking away from Cade, Jaden Ivey, Bojan Bogdanovic, future wing the Pistons draft I guess, Asar Thompson. Like the opportunity cost of him trying all this stuff that we think gives him this insane potential ceiling is something like, because I always wanted Andre Drummond to shoot threes, and I wanted to believe he's going to be a 20-point per game scorer. And then it's like, the more I watched and just figured out basketball, it's like that stuff is like, it ruins the rest of your team. There's like, yeah, Andre Drummond being close to the basket was best for the Pistons. Like, and I still believe that with Jalen Duren. I think, like, don't take him out of the paint. Like, he's a physical force down there, and he's got decent touch, and I think that's going to improve. So, yeah, I don't know how I got on that
I
tangent
think
then,
you're
because we're
spot on.
talking all stars, but yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It happens on the show. But no, I do think you're spot on because what you're looking at is with every item that you add onto Duran's list. Let's say you want him to shoot some threes, you are taking him away from the rim. So you're trading it's a trade-off. All right. So
Yeah.
there's your buzzword term. It's a trade-off. You're exchanging these 3-point shots, these ball handling chances, these ISO opportunities for lobs and rebounds. And you got to choose for yourself which you think is more valuable. I'm with you personally. I think even for his development long term, you'd want him to really really excel at everything near the rim first, and then maybe at a 15-footer, maybe at a couple corner spot up threes, like slowly build it out. I don't think you want to throw everything all at once because, like you said, like if he can't do it right away, you're trading something that he's really really good at for something that he's not yet. And depending on how good he can be at those things that he's good at, like it's a really valuable thing you lost a little bit of. So no, I,
Yeah,
I think you're spot on.
for sure. And the last thing as well on top is just what the team's goals and aspirations are. Like if this was Cade's rookie season or Killian Hayes' rookie season, the goals are different and there's more opportunity for that kind of stuff as well. But I think everyone's ready to see this team start winning some games. So,
It's a really good
uh,
point because there's less experimenting now.
yeah,
Now is the like now guys are going to have set roles, and if they take a step out of that role, they're getting benched. Like they
yeah,
want to be competitive this year. They want to take a step forward. To do that, there's no more, hey, let's have Killian Hayes shoot 15 shots tonight and see what happens. Like, nope, not
no,
happening anymore. You haven't shown that you could do it. So yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
All right, next question here from John Buck. Would you say that social media has made it harder to fleece other teams in trades because we as fans discuss all the flaws of our players?
No, I'm saying no because as much as we talk about all of these things and as much as we've watched the Pistons, whatever knowledge I have of these players is absolutely nothing in compared to what these people that are paid to analyze these players and make decisions know about them. So I think whatever comes out that we can pick up on that, maybe they're flaws or maybe they're great at, I think that they've known for a while now. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think it makes all that much of a
So I
difference.
think, look, I'm with you, but I think John is sort of in the sphere of looking at technology advancements, and social media is a part of that. I think that has helped reduce
Absolutely.
potentially some of these like historically bad deals we look at, like the Kwame Brown one, or that's the one that comes to mind, and that's like the most clown trade of all time. But there's been a slew of them. There's like and the same with drafting. Like there's still busts, but it feels like not as frequently are teams completely missing out, and teams are much more better now, like managing assets. And I think that does come with um, having an influx of analytics and analytics type people entering front offices. Some people might be against that, but I think having that blend of different um, people in a front office with a blend of like different backgrounds, some are ex-players, some are, some are from business backgrounds, analytics, etc. I think technology and all that has helped improve decision making. Obviously, there's still misses all the time, but I don't think the fan reaction, as much as I think we'd love to think we have an impact, I don't think we do. I think the only thing social media has an impact on is mental health, and unfortunately, often it's not the best impact for people's
Yeah.
mental health. So, I mean, you only have to look at poor Killian Hayes and the crap he cops. So, um, yeah, I think I like the question though because it's an interesting one. Although I don't think social media has that much of an impact on policing. I would say maybe no, I don't. Okay, I don't.
It's definitely a good question. I mean, made me think about it. That's why I paused there for a bit. I did have to gather the thoughts quickly. I would say everything that you talked about, even including the analytics aspect of it, um, that's probably kind of like you might say like a moneyballization in basketball, right? I mean, it's a lot of the same core concepts, trying to find diamonds in the rough, guys that can do very specific things. There's just more awareness of, I would say maybe the more granular things that players do out on the court, which makes it a little tougher to value. I mean,
Yeah,
like they still happen though. I mean, we brought up one here. I mean, like Wolves gave up a good amount of assets for Rudy Gobert. Like that's not no analytics would have said to do that. I mean, there's still stuff
yeah,
that goes on. I think
yeah,
I also think that there are just so many transactions now that the bad ones do get buried a little bit.
yeah.
Like the Rudy Gobert one
That's
could stick around and stand out in a few years when you're
no, that's a
looking
good
back
point.
like, wow, that was dumb. But
Yeah,
there have been such a slurry of
there's
moves that it just gets lost.
it gets a bit buried. Yeah, there's so much going on, and yeah, I agree with that. Like, um, I forgot my thought, but I think it's interesting though. I do think like one good thing about social media, I think the average NBA fan is whilst there is a lot more like toxicity, I think the average NBA fan is a bit more like in tune with like what's happening on court,
Agreed.
potentially a lot more in tune with like transactions, which has helped the game overall and the popularity of it. I think so. Um, that's one good thing, I guess, about social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
I mean, there's a
helped
lot
me
more
connect
information
with
out there, and people are using it. Yeah.
Without social media, I don't know any Pistons fans, so I love that aspect of it. I'm not shitting on social media. I just think sometimes some of the things people say on there to players, etc. I don't know about that, but anyway. All right. Another question from John. Do you fear that we have 3 to 4 players that could be worth max extensions?
I buy 3. I don't buy 4. Jalen Duren would have to do a lot to become max extension worthy. I mean, that's not even his fault, too, because I know that I've been a little more down on Jalen Duren. Like Jalen Duren could become 90% of what a lot of people online say that he can be, right? Like this unicorn out in the future. He could become 90% of that. And I mean, he's a 5. Fives don't get paid a ton of money unless you're
Yeah.
Cat, Embiid, like Jokic,
Jokic.
like yeah, Jokic, like he's got to enter that tier to start getting those max contracts. And I mean, that's just a lot. That's a lot to ask of any guy, right? Be top 3 at your position, and then I'll give you a max contract. Like it's just going to be a lot harder for him to get there. So I think, I buy Cade. I think Cade's probably heading towards a max extension. Ivy, I think Ivy, like scoring guards, they get paid cash money, so he's probably going to get max extension. And I could see Asar, if he hits, if he is Andre Iguodala, right, he's going to get a max contract too. So I think 3. I think they top out at 3 right now. I'm not too worried about it with how high the cap's going up and how those are spaced, right? I mean, it's not like you've got to sign all 3 of them in a row like you would have if it was Killian, Sadiq, and Stu. It's Cade, then it's Ivy, then it's Asar, if that's how it happens. So I'm a little bit less worried about it, but I mean, it's still a lot of players that are potentially max guys. And then you throw in Duran, like Duran's going to get money, like he's not going to get nothing, even if it's not the max. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some cap gymnastics that need to go down, and hopefully all those guys hit and it makes it worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I echo exactly what you said. Like, it's nothing against Jaron Duran and the player he can be. It's just unless you are like a top 5 center, all the guys you listed, like a true number one option. You do a few things incredibly special. Like, it's just centers just have become probably the least paid position, or like the least valuable position, I should say, not least paid. So, um, yeah, you hit it perfectly. I don't have much else to add apart from I do think there's a very high chance that of the 4 players we discuss as being max guys, like 2 of those guys are ultimately traded to bring in someone else, which I think is exciting.
Uh,
As much as we
I
get
think it's
attached to
exciting
these,
too.
yeah, like trade chips, like as much as we get excited
Yeah.
for like the potential of these guys, like I don't know, I think there's just as high a chance 2 of them are traded for. I mean, James Edwards and Nick discussed it on the Button Cardigan actually yesterday. Like, for Devin Booker, say, like everyone's in love with the idea of Devin Booker coming back to Michigan. For that to happen, you need a $50 million to trade. So, and some young talent. So I think that's an exciting part about it as well. If these guys do hit or do get to a really good level, you can bring in those MVP. Maybe I'm not getting too ahead of myself, but you can trade potentially for those types of players.
Well, and I mean, even if you don't end up packaging, for a Devin Booker, there is a lot of room with how high the cap's going up between that's a really, really good paycheck for that guy and getting a max, you know?
Yeah,
Like it's not too hard to imagine Jaden Ivey not getting a max, but still getting a lot of cash. But it's not the max, Like I would definitely say that for Asar Thompson. If he's not a guy that's scoring the ball a lot, like he might not be getting a max contract. You might only be looking at Cade that's getting max money, and the rest of those 3 guys are, close to it, but it's a little bit more of a value deal just because they didn't, hit it out of the park at the right time.
yeah,
So I'm I'm not worried about the cap yet. I think if Ivy does end up getting a max and he's, if he's still around and he gets a max extension, I think now I would be then a little bit worried about the cap.
yeah,
But as of right now, I can guarantee one. I can guarantee one.
yeah. I'm with you. Well, Cade, I think, unless
Yeah,
he
Cade's the
has
one.
I don't even want to say actually what the options are because I think he's just
Don't do
going to get
that.
a max at the end of this season. Yeah. And look, I'm with John here. Like, part of watching these guys, young guys, grow is you do get an attachment for them as a fan. Like, you build like this fan player relationship. So I see why like people might find it hard to envision them being traded, but I think it's exciting because if they're able to be traded, like I think it's a bit of a win-win, really. If they're going to get to a max contract status or close, then you keep them or you trade for like true, like genuine multiple time all stars. So I think it's a good problem to have. I wouldn't be fearful.
Um,
Uh,
let me throw out some copium real quick because maybe I'm delusional.
yeah,
Um, I think that trade that we're talking about, I think that's pretty much. I shouldn't say that. There's a best case scenario where that trade is happening because they want to get into, the next level, like contender, and they've already been, maybe made the Eastern Conference Finals twice. Like there's a world where you're sitting there in like the Toronto Raptors spot, where you've been, 1, 2, 3 in the East, you've made a few conference finals, but in order to take the next step, you got to trade DeRozan for Kawhi. Like
yeah,
that Raptors team was fairly homegrown. That Thunder team was homegrown. None of the teams won it when they were homegrown. Like I can only think of the Warriors that really did it, right? That did it with their guys that they drafted all the way through until they got Durant. But even that, right? Like they won a championship, then they lost the next year and they went, well, crap, we got to get better.
yeah,
Then they went and were lucky and had the cap to go sign Durant. So there's a world, maybe it's not likely, but I think you could root for it, John, where you keep all of these guys and they are making Eastern Conference Finals and they are an incredible team to watch, super really, super fun and then it gets painful if you want to win the championship. But there's a lot of fun to
Yeah.
be had first if things go well. So there's my coat. There's my
Absolutely.
coat. Yeah.
And this is another. I'm not even going to get into it too much because we could go on for a long time. But I don't have a problem with people who go championship or bust, or because like that's what every front office should be aiming for. But I think like if you can just build a team that's in playoff contention like year in year out for like a 5 to 6 year period, like that's also extremely good. And like those Raptors teams get clowned okay, because of the LeBron stuff, but like they were really competitive. Like LeBron in that phase was just like he's the second best player of all time. Like I don't think anyone's really going to argue with that. Some will say he's the best of all time. So like I don't know. And even that Raptor team you cited, they brought in Kawhi, and then at the deadline they also traded out JV or Valanciunas to get Marc Gasol to really bolster things up and make sure their defense like. So it's just typically how it goes with these homegrown teams. The Warriors had to bring in Iguodala. Maybe they had enough talent to do it without Iggy, but he was a Finals MVP. I know that's a bit questionable,
Off
but
the
he was
bench.
excellent in that series. Yeah, he was excellent in that 2015 series, no matter what you want to say. So every team's going to make trades, and every championship team, I would imagine, makes significant trades to their starting lineup at some point before they win that chip.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Some will probably prove me wrong, but I think it's just part of building a contender. But like you said, Wes, there's
Real
plenty
quick.
of fun to be had on the way up to that point.
Yes.
And if, yeah.
No, that was the point I was going to make. Because, like, listen, guys, these Pistons have been bad, really, really bad since 2007. Okay, I yearn for the treadmill.
Yeah.
Like, please, God, if we could be the fifth seed for 5 years in a row, oh man, that'd be so like that. What are you talking about? That'd be terrible. That'd be great. That would be so much better than the crap we've been dealing with for
Yeah.
15 years. Like, come on,
No,
put me
it's,
on the treadmill for a few years. You can like record this and bring it back in, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years if we're actually on the treadmill and I complain about it. Book it. I don't care. I want it back. Please. Just competitive basketball would be very
yeah,
nice. And
I
then
know.
like the
Like,
next level above that is Toronto or Atlanta for those few years
yeah,
where they're great
yeah,
regular season teams. You know, they're first and second in the East, and then they lose in the second round or the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, oh darn, that's terrible,
yeah. No,
right?
like,
Like I would love that.
I know. It's, yeah, I feel like we speak about it most weeks, but it's quite unbelievable to think what this team's
Right.
past 15-year history is. Like
Right.
it's like I'm not saying it's the worst of all time or whatever, but it's like I don't know. Not to turn it back to me, but I can't believe I've been supporting this team since 2012 and still have not seen a playoff win. like, anyway, like, and I know I'm not the only Pistons fan like that. Like, there's a lot of younger Pistons
Mm-hmm.
fans who have not seen anything. Like, yeah, it's quite unbelievable, really. And that's why it's so cool when I see people like Camille who tune in here every week from Turkey for this team. It's like, holy cow. Like, want this team, like, there's so many fans that are so loyal, like, that I know will appreciate just if this team can get into the playoffs year in, year out. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Anyway, I don't know. We got off track again, but it's the off season, so it's all good. And Camille brought up these names from earlier on, just in
All
regards to
right.
like tradable players. I think Robert Covington's sort of done, but Larry Nance, that's a great call from Camille. He's that sort of versatile 5-4 man. I'm not sure what his 3-point stroke was like last season, but I know he shot it well through stretches at times. So he actually is someone I could see you playing alongside Duran or Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I'm
And
not sure if he's a
he'd
free
be an
agent or
upgrade at that backup 5 spot for sure.
definitely.
He really would.
So good shout. Great shout from Camille there. Now we do have a couple more questions just from some Twitter submissions, which I'll bring up. So the first one here is from @Childers Jarrett. Is Ivy primarily the starting 2 guard now with Monte added to the team, or will we see him run point with the bench unit some?
So yes, I mean, short answer is yes. He's primarily a two guard now, and I mean to be fair, we talked about this last week. I mean, Ivy himself thought of himself as an off guard. Like this was always the plan. The plan was always that he was going to be a two who can play a little bit of the one if you need him to, but a two that can really handle the ball and pass and do things other than just shoot and cut, right? So a really, really valuable too. So I think this was always the plan, and Monte Morris just kind of solidified that that's what was going to be the case. I still think he's going to get some bench point guard minutes. I just don't think he's going to be the primary guy to get them. I mean, I could still see him getting 3 to 5 of those a game, and just to continue to explore it, let him expand his skill set. That's definitely worthwhile doing. So, but yeah, short answer, he's a two guard. He's a two.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it last week, like in his pre-draft interviews, that was something he was pushing as well. So, um,
Mm.
so if the so I'm just rereading the question. Like, I think Ivy is the starter no matter what, and
Yeah.
he would have to play terribly for like he would have to play like he'd have to be hurting this team so badly with turnovers and poor shooting and like it would have to be a disaster of like a 2-week stretch for him to be pulled from the starting lineup. Like I just think there's such a big investment in him. And Monte Morris, I think, will show he's the best backup guard in the league, especially if Tyus Jones is starting for the Wizards. But yeah, I could see Monte closing games and maybe Jaden sitting out here and there or going 3 guards. That's definitely a possibility. But I can't envision a world Jaden's coming off the bench. I just think he
Yeah.
complements Cade so well, like as a scoring
Mhm.
option at the 2. Like it's just, I think it's a match made offensively at least. Match made in heaven, those 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I think the fit's great. And I mean, like we both just said, like this was always the plan with Jaden Ivey. He was always coming in to be the two guard of the future, not the point guard that pushes Cade off ball or something like that. He's gonna still get the on ball reps, right? But that's
Yeah.
not his primary thing. And with regards to him not starting, like I'm right there with you again. If he plays awful basketball and it's January. He's been that bad since the start of the season. Okay, definitely bench him. I mean, I think this is the year where if some of these young guys are really struggling, it's time that you pull the plug and you make them have some repercussions for not playing good basketball. And to some extent, like I mean, you see this with Killian Hayes, right? Like sunk costs are sunk. He he's not been good. Just because you invested the 7th overall pick in him doesn't mean you need to keep giving him shots. They finally got to that point this year. Like if he's not playing well, he's not playing well. So he's out of the rotation. And again, like now they're trying to win a little bit. So if Jaden Ivey's not playing well, then he's not playing well and he's going to get benched. But there's a lot that needs to happen. There's a lot of bad basketball that would need to happen first
Yeah.
before you
And I
before
just
you get
think
to that point.
for sure. And I think even if he is playing poor, like I just still think it'd be like, let's pull him out early in the first quarter. Like I just think the optics of benching you know, your perceived top 3 player just early on in the season. Like, I just think there's a lot of other things they could do before fully pulling him out of the starting lineup if he's that detrimental to
Mm-hmm.
the team's performance. But I just don't really envision that. Um,
Either.
and the other thing is just to mention, and Wes, this is like you've been big on this for a while now, is like this in your thinking, particularly around the starting 5, where you have all 4 core players in it, is like building chemistry. Like I posted this morning as well, in addition to Duran and Cade only playing 25 minutes, Cade, Ivy, and Duran played 12 minutes together last season. So you need to see what you have with those 3, and you throw in Asar as well, who's obviously coming in as a rookie. Like, obviously, all 4 are going to be playing in different lineups throughout this season and future seasons, but you need to see what those 3 to 4 guys can do together when they share the floor. So even if Ivy is playing, he's not improving or he shows a little bit of regression or going through a rut, like I still think he's just going to start because you want to see ultimately what you have with your top picks from the past 3 drafts. Like that's like that is going to be a priority, and those guys have the cachet and the potential still with them that I feel like there'll be a bit of a longer leash with them, say over like Killian or if Marcus Sasser got minutes or James Wiseman, because those guys just don't have that. They're not those blue chip prospects like those four guys. So that's just the other thing with Ivy and starting.
Absolutely. And like, I think you can probably throw Isaiah Stewart into this as well, even though like I personally wouldn't because of the shooting, well, the terrible spacing that you would really get if you were playing him. 1 second. Stop yelling. My dog's whining.
I'm
Hopefully that
loving the
wasn't loud.
weekly Wes's
I
Dogs
know.
appearance.
Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, so you could probably throw Stewart into this and start him along with that other core group of four. But there's something to be said for if you as an organization have conviction in these guys that you've drafted and you think they're all going to be the real deal, throwing them out there and making them figure it out. Like there are some things like as a player and as someone who's coached a little bit like at really lower levels, like there are some things that you just have to figure out with a guy on your own. It can't be directed. You can't have someone point point for you, tell you how to do it. Like there's just some aspects of chemistry and knowing where guys are going to be that the only way you're going to get it is if the two, three, four, five of you go out on your own, play a bunch of basketball for the team, like just figure it out over time. Like there are going to be kinks with any starting lineup they throw out there. There's not an easy like, oh, that lineup has all of the balance, all of the talent, and all of the shooting and defense, like everything that you'd want in the starting lineup. That's not the roster that they have. So, why I keep pushing for put those core group of four guys out there to start is just like what you said. Like, hey, it's not going to be good no matter what. There's no perfect lineup. There's going to be issues. Have these guys figure it out. Have them figure it out together and just roll with the roller coaster because there's going to be one anyway. I think that's probably your most value long term. And like I said, I mean, I wouldn't put Stewart out in that because I don't personally view him in that way. But if they do, like, sure, why not? Start him with Cade, Ivy, Asar, and Durham. Let him work
Yeah,
through it. He's going to have to shoot it. Let him work through it.
for sure. No, I'm with you. We've got two more questions I want to get through before we finish here. So another one from Twitter from @98th Slime. Do you see Asar getting reps time at the PG at the point guard position or running the offense this season? I ask that because I believe his playmaking ability is very underrated.
Do not. I don't think that's anything to do with his playmaking unless you put ball handling and lump that in with playmaking. Like I do not think he can handle the ball well enough to be a primary initiator. I think he can handle the ball just fine as a secondary or tertiary guy, But if you're going to have him actually initiating offense, he needs to really tighten up that handle. It's high, it's pretty loose. In summer league, he even lost it a few times just with no one around. And then if he got into traffic, I mean, sometimes he'd pick it up too early. Like there's the usual young player things that he has with his handle, in addition to it generally being a little bit high and loose in traffic. So, um, no, I don't think he's playing point guard at all this season. I think he's going to get plenty of, you know, playmaking reps where he's maybe going to handle a ball screen or take a handoff and get downhill or maybe even play out of the short roll, make a few passes in a 4-on-3. But no, I don't think he's running point guard this offseason or this season, probably next season either. Like that's something you maybe in year 3, 4, 5 it starts to show up, but like even the guy they compared him to, Iguodala, like, he didn't run purely the point guard a ton. He did it a bit, not a
Yeah.
ton. I just don't think that's ever going to be a big portion of his minutes. It just might be a fun little sideshow that he gets to do every now and then.
For sure. So I got a question here, but I want to tie it in because I think it'll help answer John's lineup suggestion for the starting lineup here and why he could see Ivy coming off the bench. He suggests Cade, Monte Morris, Assar, Boyan, and Duran. With the thought process being a little bit more shooting around Cade, veteran shooters. And then the question here from YouTube user is, who is the first guard off the bench? Does Morris replace Cade in the first, or does Burks replace Ivy in the first? So I probably didn't tie that together very well, but maybe we'll just answer YouTube user's question first, and then I'll get to John's suggestion.
No, I'll tie it together. The first guard off the bench is Monte Morris. And coming off the bench, he's going to come in for Ivy, and that's going to be the lineup because I'm not coming off the Asar and Boyan starting together train. So that's where I'm sticking. No, I think first guard off the bench, no matter who he comes in for, is going to be Monte Morris. He's the best backup guard they have, and I mean he takes a lot of pressure off Cade Cunningham. I think you mentioned him closing a lot of games. I think that might be at least at the start of the year the pairing that you get to close games. I think Vicini actually might have mentioned this today in his piece with James Edwards. Don't quote me on it. I think he talked about it. I'm not 100% sure, but Cade's still got some turnover issues. And when you get to the end of games and it's close and you want to win, like that's the worst thing that can happen is for you to turn over the ball. So throw in Monte Morris, and you're not gonna. Maybe you go 3 guard and keep Ivy out there, but having Monte Morris handle more of the primary ball handling in those closing lineups, pushing Cade off ball, and letting him maybe be more of an attacker and scorer at least to start the season until he cleans up those turnovers. I think is something we're probably going to see quite a bit. But yeah, John, the lineup that you put out there. I mean, I think in this lineup, Morris is the point guard and Cade's more of a scorer, which is fine. Cade's going to get his buckets. But I think that's a lineup that's actually going to get quite a bit of play. Honestly, I mean, Asar and Dern are the only non-shooters, and they both theoretically can play very good defense. So that's a fairly good lineup.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I agree with how you sort of who's the first guy off the bench, and that Morris will replace Ivy. My issue with starting that lineup is, for a start, Jaden and Monte Morris are actually very similar shooters off the catch from 3, like catch and shoot scenarios, not off the bounce. And Monte doesn't take a lot of off the dribble threes anyway. He likes to get into the mid range. The other reason I just wouldn't bring Jaden Ivey off the bench and have Monte Morris start is because, as we alluded to, Jaden Ivey's a 2. Like, he's not a pure playmaker. Like, you probably want to have Monte come off the bench. So then when Cade needs his rest, say 8 minutes into the court, he's still got Monte on the floor to run the offense as a point guard and distributor. And he can play alongside Cade. But that would be another thing of like why Jaden Ivey should start. He's just as good a shooter from 3. He provides a bit more athletically as a cutter, potentially a bit more. We still got to see this with Jaden, with Cade and Jaden, but and then Monte's just like Jaden Ivey is by no means an all-world defender. We know that's a major area of his game. He needs to improve it. Monte Morris is like 6 foot. Like, you'd be asking Cade and Asar to take the best wing and the best ball handler of the opposing team, which I think we've discussed. I don't think you want Cade guarding the opponent's best ball handler. Like, I think that's where those turnover issues will really rear their head if he's getting fatigued quickly. And that's where he'll start taking like step back threes and settling for jumpers. And we want Cade attacking and having the energy to attack at all times. So as much as I like Cade and Morris together, or Cade and Monte Morris together, I just don't think that's a starting lineup. I think it sort of mucks up the rotation with the backup point guard play and those sort of things. But I still think it's as you said, Wes, I still think that's a great lineup that we will see play a lot of minutes together. That's a really, offensively, I like that. You can do a bit in transition there as well. rebounding might be an issue, but as we said, there's going to be issues with most of these lineups with young guys just sort of learning the ropes. So, yeah. And John says didn't know
Last
Monte was
thought
that
on
short.
this.
I hope I'm
He
not
is.
saying.
He
I
is.
just think Monte Morris is like 6'1".
He
Yeah, I'm
is.
pretty
No,
sure he's
he
like
is.
six
He's a
foot
short.
six
He's a
one.
shorter guy.
Yeah,
So my last thought on all this, and it's to your point on the defense. Um, I think the best thing you can say about Monte Morris on the defensive end is that he gives full effort and he tries. I mean
yeah,
that's not nothing in the NBA. Okay, like think of the number of guys that get just railed online because they don't play defense, right? They don't try. They take possessions off on that end. I mean, James Harden is like the king of this. He gets ripped for it all the time. And obviously, he's James Harden is still an all-star, all NBA guy. So, like, grain of salt, but like Monte Morris does not have that issue. He gives full effort on defense, even though he's not good at it. He's on top of his rotations. He pays attention. He communicates. Like he's a fine functional defender. You can make it work with him. You would rather have Jaden Ivey out there defensively because of the size, like you said.
yeah,
And so this is something that we didn't get to see last year. This partly because Cade was hurt so much, but also because Ivy was a rookie, right? Like even after Cade got hurt, they were usually pairing him with Killian Hayes, who took the more threatening guard matchup. I really want to see Jaden Ivey guard the Dames, the Stephs, like the star point guards, the Trey Young, all of that. To YouTube users' point, Ivy's a better on ball defender than I think he gets credit for because of how bad he is off the ball. Like if you just he's a dog. If you tell him to point and attack, he'll go and he will. He still has some struggles navigating screens and he'll still get caught up in rotations. But like if you tell him to just hound that guy when he's dribbling the ball, he does a fairly good job of it. So I really am looking for that to be unleashed this season. You know, like I know Cade's a pretty good stay in front guy. He's not a bad defender by any means, but he's going to have such a burden on offense. Part of the appeal of Jaden Ivey, at least in the draft, was like, yeah, he hasn't shown it, he hasn't done it, but he's got all this defensive potential. He's like 6'4" with a what is it, a 7-foot wingspan? Like he's a pterodactyl out there. He's got long arms, broad shoulders, like quick as heck, super athletic. Like Jaden Ivey has all the tools. So I want to see if he can do it. I want to see if he can actually take that pressure off Cade, guard some of the really good point guards in the league, and let Cade kind of catch his breath on that end a little bit. And QT, you're right. You're absolutely right. Especially his rookie year, it wasn't as much of an issue last season, but we only saw 10 games, so maybe he was just feeling very quick for whatever
yeah,
reason during those 10 games. We don't know, but quicker guards were absolutely a problem for him his rookie year.
yeah, definitely. Agree with everything you said, man. I don't think I have much more to add. Um, Final thought is just I'm so ready for basketball to return. I posted it the other day. Like I've actually after that season, like I just watching that, like I genuinely was exhausted from Pistons basketball. I never have been before, but it's genuinely like I've actually enjoyed the break. Like this, it's always nice to have the draft in summer league to keep the appetite wet. But like just to like up until like now, like I'm ready for basketball to return. So I think we've got an exciting next 4 to 6 weeks
As well.
coming up on the show where hopefully we're still probably got another couple of weeks of no news, but yeah, we're ramping up now to sort of the exciting part of the season. So I'm really ready for basketball to return. And anytime I talk negatively, like it's just in spots. Like I'm very excited to watch this team. Like this is the most excited I've been. So I'm really looking forward to it.
YouTube user,
And
appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, man. Well, I know you've got a long drive ahead tonight, Wes. So I appreciate you jumping on tonight, making the time, my friend. Drive safely. And to everyone who's in the comments, once again, we appreciate anyone watching at this time of the year. It's not a whole ton to talk about, so we appreciate all the engagement, the comments, the questions. It keeps the show going, and we hope you guys enjoy it as much as we do. And finally, a special shout out to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for making this happen. Until then, we'll see you next week. Go Pistons.